Commission for Tuesday, September 8th at 6:32 p.m. We will begin with the roll.
Commissioner Tucker-Long.
Here.
Commissioner Powers.
Here.
This is
Commissioner
a thumbs up.
Here.
Alderperson Cole.
Here.
Mayor Diaz.
Here.
Commissioner Hingle.
Here.
Commissioner Lytle.
Here.
Okay, and just FYI, I do see us on YouTube. It seems like it's broadcasting Andy's computer, so I can see his background. But it is on YouTube, so I think we're good.
Okay.
But I will turn that off so I don't cause any phone issues. All right. Next up, we have item 3, which is public comment. Mr. Sayre, do we have any people to speak under this one?
No, we don't have anyone to speak under this one. We do have it for some specific items that are on the agenda.
Gotcha. So then when we go to those, we'll call on people?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. First up, we will move on to item 4, which is a public hearing on a planned unit development, PUD, a general development plan, GDP review for a one-story, 1,600 square foot building addition located at 517 Half Mile Road. Mr. Sayre, can you give us a brief overview before we get into the public hearing?
Sure. This is a public hearing for a planned development, general development plan. This is step 3 of 4 in the planned development process. This is for Atkins Bike Shop, which is at 517 Half Mile Road. They're looking at doing an expansion. The expansion requires a zoning exemption for a rear yard setback exemption. So that requires the plan development. So this is step 3 of 4, the general development plan. This is where zoning entitlements can be granted. As part of this, we did put a public hearing notification sign on the property. We also mailed public hearing notices to all property owners within 200 feet. And we also placed a notice, public hearing notice in the newspaper as well. So this is a public hearing. The Plan Commission has the potential tonight to make a recommendation, and then ultimately the Common Council next Monday night would have the ability to potentially approve the GDP.
Excellent. With that, I will move that we open a public hearing on this subject. Is there a second?
Sure,
I'll second.
Everyone who wants, I think that was Commissioner Tucker-Long. Motioned and seconded. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no? And we are in the public hearing. Mr. Sayre, any comments or public speakers for this one?
No, we do not have any.
All right. With that, I would accept a motion to close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Motion by Commissioner Hingle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Alder Cole. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 Opposed, no? And just for the record, the public hearing opened at 6:34 p.m. and closed at 6:35 p.m. Mr. Sayre.
Thank you. So once again, this is a planned unit development for Atkins Bike Shop located at 517 Half Mile Road. The property in question is highlighted in yellow on the screen before you. The Plan Commission provided a concept plan review for this project in August of 2020. In general, it was well received at that point. The addition at that point was 1,280 square feet. The size of the project has slightly bumped up to 1,600 square feet. And that's just because as they've kind of worked through the project, they increased the size of the expansion slightly. In general, though, the Plan Commission was receptive and open to the rear yard setback exemption, and they encouraged the applicants to kind of talk with their adjacent property owners to the south, which they have. They have kind of completed that. That was a comment from both the Plan Commission and the Common Council. The addition itself would be located on the south side of the building. It's highlighted in orange on the screen before you. The proposed setback of the addition would be 10 feet. A typical zoning setback is 25 feet. Staff doesn't have any concerns with the exemption. The property to the south is a trucking transportation business. So this will have very small or no impact on the adjacent property owners. Access to the site would be unchanged for this. They are proposing to add a small additional asphalt area, which would be 48 by 40. Staff doesn't have any concerns with access or the parking or the additional asphalt on the property. Generally, we're supportive of what they're looking at doing here. The building expansion itself, is the intent here is to match the existing building. It's going to be a cleary building, a metal building. The roof line would blend with what's there today. The goal is to provide a seamless transition to kind of what's out there right now. A conceptual landscaping plan was included in the packet. This will be refined and completed for the PIP submittal if this project moves forward. As of right now, the applicant has exceeded the required landscaping points that are required by the ordinance. Once again, in general, staff is supportive and receptive to the general development plan. I think it's a nice expansion. I know Atkins has been real busy, especially during the COVID pandemic. So this is something that staff can support. I know that the applicant is eager and excited to kind of get moving on this expansion. So with that, staff recommends the Plan Commission recommend to the Common Council approval of the general development plan for 517 Half Mile Road. That would include the rear yard setback exemption of 10 feet. And staff would be happy to answer any questions, and I believe the applicants are here tonight. They'd be happy to answer any questions that staff can't.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions from the Plan Commission?
I would move to approve this project.
Motion by Commissioner Hankert. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Cole. Anything to add, Commissioner Hankert?
Just the, that it includes the exemption for the setback as staff has outlined, but no, nothing additional.
Excellent. I'll just call it myself. I think it's great to see a business in Verona doing well, and I wish them all the best with their expansion. Any other questions or comments on this motion? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
Just a super quick question. I'm not super concerned about this, but I did notice that there's like a boulder retaining wall, I think it said. I'm trying to read the tiny thing on on my PDF, but it runs between like the Atkins parking lot and the parking lot across from them.
Yep, that's there today. So that's an existing wall that's there today between the Atkins and the hotel.
Sure. I just wanted to double check because I noticed it doesn't look like it's being extended, but they are adding more parking lot, and it looks like it runs along the same way. Has anyone talked to the hotel to see if they're concerned about the barrier between the parking lots not running the whole length of the parking lot anymore?
Well, we haven't looked at that yet. We'll take a look at that as the PIP. So that's
Oh, okay.
Like they come back next month. So we'll work with the applicant and take a look at that. And if anything, we'll have Carla take a look at that as well too, and just see what the grades are on the property. That's a good point though. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good.
Any other questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the general development plan for 517 Half Mile Road with a rear setback exemption of 10 feet, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we will move. Get my agenda up. Next, we will move on to item 5, which is a public hearing regarding a planned unit development (PUD) general development plan (GDP) for a 4-story 80-unit apartment building with 9,319 square feet of commercial space located at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue. Mr. Sayre, can you give us a brief overview before we get into public hearing?
Sure. So once again, this is a general development plan, so it's the same process that we had for the last project. So this is a general development plan that's before the Plan Commission. At this point in the process, it's step 3 of 4. This is where zoning entitlements can potentially be granted as part of that. The last step of the process is the precise implementation plan, and that's where you would get the landscaping details, photometric plans, detailed stormwater management plans. But for this step, there is a public hearing requirement before the Plan Commission. As part of that, we did put in the ground a public hearing notification sign. We also notified all property owners within 200 feet of the property. And then we also had a public hearing notice in the newspaper. And we also post all development projects on the city's website. And we do a monthly email blast, just notifying people those projects have been posted. So that's the notice that's been provided for it. Similar to the last project, the Plan Commission has the potential to provide a recommendation to the Common Council. If it chooses to do so, that would be on the agenda for next Monday night at 7 p.m. So once again, this public hearing is required as part of the plan development process. And once you open it up, we do have 6 people that have signed up and registered to speak.
With that, I will move that we open a public hearing on this topic. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Lytle. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. And the public hearing is open at 6:42 p.m. Mr. Sayer, our first speaker.
First person up is going to be Scott Manley.
All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay. I'll try and turn the camera on.
Not a requirement, but you know.
All right, there we go.
There you go.
Well, first of all, good evening, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you from the other side of the table, so to speak. My first interaction with the Plan Commission as a non-Plan Commission member in a very long time, but appreciate the opportunity to provide my perspective on this proposed project. And really the concerns that I'd like to bring up are largely related to public safety, but I guess I would begin by saying that as a general matter, I don't think that using TIF subsidies in order to support residential development, whether it be single family or multifamily, is typically in the public interest, particularly for apartment type developments, where I think it's pretty clear in Verona that developers have been able to bring apartment projects online without the need for TIF assistance. I know that some projects have sought TIF assistance in the past, and I think the city has rightly been skeptical about whether or not TIF assistance should be provided to apartment or multifamily housing projects. But I especially think that asking for a taxpayer subsidy for housing that itself would require a taxpayer subsidy is sort of a double hit to taxpayers. And my understanding of this project is that in addition to a TIF subsidy, this project would require, or they would be asking, if not from the city, from some other government entity, to have a government subsidy to subsidize its rental income. So I think, if there's anything that we as a city have shown over the last several years, if not more than a decade, is that we're very capable of building and operating apartment housing in this city without TIF subsidies. And our TIF law actually requires that in order for the city to move forward with a TIF project, that we make a finding that but for the TIF assistance, the project would not be able to be done. And I think, as I said, our record in Verona is very clear. We've been able to bring quite a bit of apartment building online without TIF assistance. But beyond that, I just wanted to raise a concern related to public safety, because if you've followed in the news for the past several years what has happened in the city of Madison, I think it's at a minimum it's a cautionary tale for Verona, and perhaps we as a city might want to consider some of the public safety problems that Madison has had with their subsidized housing projects in the city. They've had two projects, one on the far west side of Madison and one on the far east side of Madison, both of which the city ultimately had to pursue a nuisance declaration for. In fact, the project on the city's project on the east side, the far east side of Madison, it was announced in May of this year that just about a year after it was built and opened, the city of Madison had to declare their own project a public nuisance because of the large number of police calls and crime and so forth that was disrupting the community. And so I think, you know, given what happened on the Far East Side, with the Far West Side, they had over 200 police calls in the first 5 months alone of that project, that apartment project opening. And I think that, you know, when you look at what those calls were for, there was violence, domestic disturbances, drug dealing, drug overdoses. It's really, I think for many of us in Verona, the types of police calls that, you know, nobody wants to have in their community. And I think we ought to think long and hard before we take action that could potentially result in those types of, you know, increased police calls, particularly given the location of this proposal, which abuts residential property, but is also just a very short distance away from the old Sugar Creek school and the New Century Charter School, where the city is in the process of redeveloping that property and trying to make it, you know, a wonderful place where people in the community can come and recreate and congregate and so forth. It would be a shame if we ended up approving a project that ultimately was a nuisance for the city and attracted a lot of police calls right in the same vicinity where we're trying to do a redevelopment where we're encouraging people, you know, to come and participate in our community. So those are really the concerns that I have. Again, somewhat financial, but also public safety related. And I appreciate the opportunity to share my concerns with you.
Thank you.
Hey, Scott.
Whoever is the next speaker.
Next up, I have James Barkner. I think it's going to be Jim B. So I hope I'm right here, Luke.
It's all right. I believe you're muted.
We've made it.
Okay.
I'm Jim and Sharon Berkner, that is pronounced that way, and we live at 404 Rita Avenue, just the north side of this project that's proposed. And I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak at this hearing. My wife and I have 7 points to make on this. And in the interest of brevity, I'm going to just read the notes that I got. We recognize the need for more affordable and lower income housing in Verona, and that includes future apartments at 410 and 420 West Verona Avenue. But we recommend that this project be greatly reduced in scale. This project is too tall. It has too many apartments, likely small ones. It will be too densely populated. It will add to what we already have here is a growing traffic problem. And it will greatly reduce housing values since it's totally inconsistent with an old established neighborhood of one-story homes. I happen to also share Scott Manley's public safety concern, and I thank him for that. This project would be the new southern horizon for Rita Avenue. And we now look across our street at one-story houses and open spaces. The new view would be the same one-story houses plus commerce and 2, 3, 4 stories of north-facing apartments that will obviously drop property values for us and for our neighbors. 2 of our neighbors, residents at 403 and 405 Rita Avenue, abutting and their property line would abut this proposal. They have, I just lost my place here, just bear with me. They have solar water heating, and in one case, one house has solar water heat, the other heats their house with solar power. And with this building going up as proposed, those things would become inoperative until high noon, if at all. We don't need even more traffic. Reed Avenue has become a shortcut to the West Verona Avenue and beyond from the north and east. It's become a bit of a hazard to exit from our drive when the nearest of two 90-degree corners is less than 100 feet away. It's become traffic to come around at whatever speed they can negotiate the corner and accelerate before braking for the next 90-degree corner, which heads west on West Verona Avenue. We expect that the traffic will grow substantially when the new high school is fully operating, and we have a lot of students going by right now. This project cannot be viewed in isolation, again, tagging on what Mr. Manley said, but it's part of a larger planning for Verona. Within a 3-block area, we will soon have as many as 423 to 463 units. Sugar Creek has 110 to 120 market rate apartments. Sugar Creek also is destined to have 90 to 120 affordable rate apartments. The car wash area going over to St. Vincent has 143 apartments, and I have no idea what their status is or who they're planning to attract. And of course, now with the Classic and the bank properties, we're proposing another 80 apartments. This, of course, does not include the currently subsidized rental units that are just west, nor the potential from Berkeley Road, which is, of course, beyond that three-block limit. The newly completed Lincoln Street apartments are the largest possible comparable project on the east side that I'm familiar with. From all exterior appearances, the housing density of this project is about half of what is being proposed here on the west side. To also compare them, that project is not located across from an old established neighborhood, and it also is not 4 stories high. It may be time to consider whether this west side area is destined to be Verona's rental district, in Verona's long-range plan, or whether that is good planning. We recommend that this project be downsized to something that is compatible with a long-established neighborhood that is contiguous with it. So with that, thank you very much for listening to us. And we certainly appreciate what you do for Verona. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions from the Plan Commission?
No, I think we've kind of said it. We hear the same thing from our neighbors. And I don't know if any neighbors are scheduled. Thank
We
you.
got a few other speakers. Mr. Sayer?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Next up, I have Dave Kaltenberg. I apologize if I'm butchering names here. Dave, we can hear you, but we can't see your video. Do you want to turn it up? There you go.
There we go.
All right, you're up.
I'm Dave Kaltenberg. Good evening. I live at 409 Rita Avenue, which is currently directly behind Old National Bank. So I'll be pretty directly impacted by this development. As Jim said, a lot of the stuff that he said is what I had on my list. First off, the proposed height of the project is, I think, gonna shade the various homes and is not something that should be backing up to residential single-family homes. I think you saw that with the Lincoln Street project. I think that started out as at least 4 stories, and through the different sessions got whittled down to what it currently is. But this area is a much smaller area, as Jim said, and the access to Verona Avenue is either right now is very close to Rita Street, the way it's shown on the current plan. And during the public meeting that the developer had with the neighborhood, the child care center, the daycare center down just on the other end of the property, wanted to make clear that they didn't want that access moved any closer to them because that they already have traffic concerns for people getting in and out of their property. As I look at the zoning, it looks like that is zoned for urban commercial. And when I read that description and purpose, it indicates in order to ensure a minimum of disruption to residential development, no development within this district shall take direct access to a local residential street or a residential collector street. That sounds like what Rita Avenue is, and I think they have a access onto that. That's one of the main entrances to that property. The traffic concerns right now, as Jim said, at Legion Street, Rita Street don't exactly line up straight across. So it's a real weird thing when you're sitting there waiting to turn left because somebody can turn off a Legion Street onto Verona Avenue and be on you very quickly because it's such a short stretch in there. It's not directly across, so you don't really see them directly when you're looking at traffic, and all of a sudden somebody there will jump in, and yeah, so it's quite dangerous, I think, right now. And the Sugar Creek and whatever that project west of Legion Street that is proposed, I got to believe that's just going to add to traffic on Legion Street there, turning onto Verona Avenue, and make that problem worse. And now you're adding another entrance on the north side, very close to Rita Street, or Rita Avenue. So I don't know how that's going to work out, but I think that's going to be pretty dangerous there. The next thing I had is I just, as Jim went through the number of properties, multifamily housing in our 2 or 3 block area here, I had come up with the same number. It's something over 400 multifamily units if the Sugar Creek development and that the one that's west of Legion Street that's proposed go through. So that's a lot of properties there are multifamily housing on your main thoroughfare to the city. So I question the need for all that multifamily housing. And I think the idea behind affordable housing, and granted maybe Verona needs more, but I don't think you want to put it all in one area. And you're concentrating a lot in a 2 to 3 block area. Finally, I just want to say, my family moved to Verona in 1955, and I think every year since then I have heard people talk about the lack of a nice business district, downtown business district in Verona. Well, I can guarantee you that putting first floor multifamily housing on your main thoroughfare through Verona is going to do nothing to enhance that downtown district. So I don't think this project brings anything to Verona other than, yeah, possibly a few more tax dollars right now on area that I agree does need development, but I don't think it's this development. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave.
Who's next, Mr. Sayer?
Next up, I have Phil.
You're unmuted, Phil. And
Oh, there we go. It's a small screen, and I'm trying to read it. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you, the gentleman who went before me. I live at 501 Mark Drive, and I have a lot of same concerns that they all have. My biggest one is Rita and Legion and Verona Avenue right now is a mess for traffic in the morning to begin with. And this proposal would add anywhere from 50 to 100 plus more vehicles going in and out. When their main drive gets backed up, they're going to be coming out that Rita exit. And my concern is that they're just going to zip right up Mark Drive to Todd, right through our residential area. And that really destroys the ambience of this neighborhood. You know, Rita is an entrance to our neighborhood, and this project is just far too massive to be sitting there. You know, this is, like they said, this is family, single-story residential. It's a long-term established neighborhood. And I know the issues I had with the parking lot right behind me, and this is going to be even a bigger parking lot. So one of the concerns I had there is, number one is lack of parking. They have 80 underground parking lots or parking spots proposed, yet at our neighborhood meeting, they said none of that is going to be guaranteed to the people residing in that facility. So it's going to be a free-for-all for who's going to park underground during the winter. They did mention that anyone in the commercial spaces would be guaranteed underground parking. So how many does that take away? You know, yeah, they're saying we have one parking stall for every apartment, but you know, that's going to go away if they're going to reserve spaces for that. This commercial space, if they put a restaurant with a bar in their biggest one there, where are those people going to park? I mean, are they going to be parked on Rita Street? And is the Mark Drive going to be turned into a daytime and nighttime parking lot for that establishment? Because the other day at the Classic, I counted 35 cars parked out in front of there. Their parking concerns is just, you know, they don't meet the needs. It's just going to be more of a traffic congestion mess. By the time this would be built, you know, hopefully our students are going back to school. Verona Road is going to be even worse with all that congestion. And they're still putting this in. Now they're asking for a variance to move it closer to Verona Road, or Verona Avenue, excuse me. That's also US Highway 151 business. Why would you put your doorway to these 3-bedroom townhomes right on a busy street? Where are those kids going to play? You know, this is a safety issue also. I mean, their back door is an interior hallway. It's just too massive of a project to fit this location. It doesn't, if you look up and down the north side of Verona Avenue, it doesn't fit with anything else that's been established here for years. There's going to be increased light and noise pollution. And the gentleman who has his house at the end of Plimpton, that dead end, he's going to be inundated with people going in and out of their parking garage at all hours of the night. His house sits the closest to that property line. And that's right where everyone's going to be going back and forth. It's just going to be a nuisance to them. So I would say, you know, don't grant the height variance. You didn't let the hotels go over 3. You didn't let the apartment building on Lincoln go over 3. This doesn't need that either. I'm trying to check my list here. Sorry. Noise and light pollution of this size of development is a big concern of mine, because I've been dealing with just this little small parking lot off the back of my property. And it's gotten a lot better since they did the renovation 2 years ago, and they put in a storage shed and an enclosed area for their dumpsters. So that deadens a lot of the noise. In my backyard, thankfully, the people who lived here before me did some really nice landscaping. So I do have a lot of natural landscaping to help with noise and light reduction, but we still get a lot of noise pollution. Let's see, as for the commercial space, yeah, the bank is going to be filled there, but I see that you have on the agenda another property that's been up and running in Verona for years, and they can't keep their commercial spaces filled, and they want to change that into luxury apartments because they just can't find the people to do it. Having these commercial fronting Rita, I think that's a dead end for those two commercial spaces, because you're going to have commercial spaces on the south side. You got all this commercial space being built up by the new high school. And you also have Liberty Park out there on the interchange. And that, I hate to say it, that's going to become the downtown. That's where a lot of commerce is building. And it's going to be easier access, easier parking and all that. So I just don't think this massive of a project fits in this location. It's not going to benefit our neighborhood at all. And actually, I think it's going to destroy our neighborhood a little bit. And what also concerns me is that I know this is a recovered marsh area. A lot of the homes in this area have 2 sump pumps dealing with the water issues now. If you're putting this huge underground parking facility in that space, how's that going to impact the water table to all the neighboring properties? I mean, that's one of my other concerns there. Because we did have some flooding issues when I first moved in here 20 years ago, but there's been a lot of changes to storm sewers and that has helped, but we still have 2 sump pumps. Let's see, I'm just going down my list here. What we really need is, more affordable alternative home ownership, much like they're going to be proposing for that Gus property over by the other water tower. I think that better meets the needs. That's 2 stories. That fits in better with our neighborhood and our community. This 4-story thing is just too massive. There's a similar development over on Watts and Commerce that's over by Menards West. And just to see that sitting there and to say that's what you want to be the entrance to our neighborhood, I don't know. I'm sorry, it's just too massive. So, lighting, noise, how are they going to, they're going to have to do safety lighting, because of the large parking lot and everything. And that lighting pollution is going to impact all of us, especially those, because if you're coming right out Rita, anyone who lives there, they're going to start going out Rita and coming up Mark Drive. So they're not going to worry about trying to get out on the Rita Avenue or their private drives there. So I guess just to end, I'm, as you can guess, I'm not in favor of this for several reasons, and safety is a big concern. Where are the kids going to be playing? There's no space for kids. And it's coming up they're trying to ask for that variance. I just say it should be denied all around. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Sayer.
Thanks, Bill. All right, next up we have Carol Jameson. Hey, Carol, we can hear you. I don't think we can see you yet.
All right.
You're muted now. Okay, now you're unmuted. Video is not a requirement if you don't want. Oh, okay. There we go.
All right. Okay, good. I'm Carol Jameson. I'm representing my mother who lives at 406 Rita Avenue, and she's lived there for over 60 years now, so I'm pretty familiar with the neighborhood. And just looking around, it's almost all ranch-style homes, a couple split levels, or there might be some 2-story in there. But when I heard about this 4-story, it just doesn't fit there at all. Even 3-story to me would be way out of whack. And so the other concern I had was traffic and parking, because it's been a real nice laid back neighborhood. And to increase that traffic, and I can see if they don't have enough parking spaces, they're going to start parking on Rita. And we're very concerned about that. And the reason we have these concerns is we really feel it's going to affect our property value. So yeah, we're not supporting this at all. And I sort of echoing what a couple other people said, like even I remember it was a swamp area way back when, so I know that that is a concern. My mom has a sump pump, most of the neighbors do. And just, you know, I can see 2-story, but I can't see the 3, and if they could provide parking and figure out the traffic, but otherwise we're pretty opposed to it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sayer, who's next?
Last speaker we have is Sean O'Brien.
Oh, there we go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean O'Brien, and I'm a principal of North Point Development. I appreciate this opportunity to speak at the public hearing. Just wanted to highlight a couple of things. One, we are proposing a workforce housing development with retail space. That's a far different type of property than the one described by the first speaker tonight. The properties that he was describing are supportive housing developments that include extremely intensive case management. That is very important, and you know those projects are needed, but this is not going to be one of those projects. It's going to be for affordable housing for working families in Verona. A little bit about myself. Again, I'm a principal of North Point Development, but I'm also a long-term West Side resident. I actually grew up in Verona, went to high school in Verona, and still spend a lot of time in the community. So I've been around and know things that have changed, and I've been involved in the community for a very long time. And I think this project would be a very nice addition to the community for many reasons. We did hold a public meeting with the neighborhood. I guess it wouldn't be a public meeting. It was just a neighborhood meeting at the end of July. We had a few folks from the neighborhood, join us. A lot of folks from the Common Council, and at that meeting, we had some concerns that were addressed to us. Some of those had to deal with some of the same things you're hearing tonight. But with those concerns, we've made some changes to our plan. We've added some more parking. We're now at about 1.75 stalls per unit. And as one of the other speakers alluded to, just kind of clarify, the parking in the basement is going to be for the tenants. They're going to rent that space. But our experience as developers and as long-term owners is that during the day there will be available parking in the basement, and we'll monitor that. And as we find that majority of our tenants are going to work, that will allow access to some of our retail tenants to park underneath the building and kind of share that space. But that parking underneath will be mainly for the tenants, and then we'll have a sufficient amount of parking that we would have for surface behind the building as well. One of the things we did tell the neighbors when we met with them is that this first step is just get zoning approval. We're intending to submit a tax credit application to WIDA in December, and we need permissive zoning in place in order to do that. But if we are able to move the project forward, we fully intend to have an additional meeting with the neighbors to talk about what else would we do with that retail space. Some folks have said they'd like to see a restaurant go there, and some folks have said that they're concerned about what parking needs would be required for various tenants. And I think it's really important for us to go back to the neighborhood after we have received a notification from WIDA, are able to move this project forward, to have that conversation to really gauge what sort of tenants should we prioritize in these additional spaces. I think it goes without saying that both Old National Bank and the owners of Classics fully support our plan. nothing's clearer than Old National saying that they want to maintain, that location, be part of this development. And they, have guaranteed that they'd like to, sign a 25-year lease with another 15 years of options. So they've made a 40-year commitment to this project that they'd like to stay and kind of be the anchor, not to confuse everyone with Anchor Bank, but I've done that before. So at Old National. The other changes that we made based on that neighborhood meeting, we're adding a privacy fence between our property and the houses behind. We're working with our architect and our engineers to make sure that our lighting plan is, basically, what we would need for safety, but not, intrusive of the neighbors that are to the north. I've also traded some emails from folks that weren't on the actual call itself, including the resident who has the significant solar panel array system, on their roofs. And, we had some conversation about the height of the building. And at the end of our conversations, she had emailed me and said that, all of her concerns have been addressed. And so, she had thanked me for getting back to her and addressing her concerns. Otherwise, nothing really from that, neighborhood meeting that was a little bit, too concerning. You did hear from one of the neighbors, the daycare down the street doesn't necessarily want us to put an entrance to this property, between our building and the water tower. We don't intend to at this time. We're still working with city staff. However, they'd like to see us continue to move that, Verona Ave entrance, down closer, to the east, kind of away from Rita. We're still taking a strong look at that. Again, at this point, we're just asking for permissive zoning approval, and we'll be back later on for our precise implementation plan. I also, want to mention that this is going to be the first workforce housing development that Verona has seen that's available for families, and I think that's really important. And I think this project's in harmony with many of the city's goals in the comp plan and downtown mobility and development plan. This is a new rental project that's going to include retail, and the city has stressed a strong need for retail and new retail. It will include workforce housing, but then more importantly, housing that will support public transportation. So I appreciate, taking the time to, deliberate on this project, and I'll be available after to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Sayre, do we have more speakers? I lost track.
Oh, that's it.
That's it. All right. With that, motion to close the public hearing would be in order.
So moved.
Motion by Alder Cole. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Commissioner Power. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. The public hearing is closed at 7:20 p.m. Mr. Sayre.
Thank you. So once again, this is a general development plan for 410, 420 West Verona Avenue. I think we're all familiar with the property, but if we're not, it is highlighted in yellow on the screen before you. It includes the classic property and then also the old National Bank property. So it's the lands between Rita and the city water tower on West Verona Avenue. There was a concept review for the project in July of 2020, and that went before the Plan Commission and Common Council. Comments from the Plan Commission included support for the workforce housing units, support for the 3-bedroom units, questions regarding the design and location for the commercial units along Rita Avenue instead of West Verona Avenue, concerns for the parking for the site with residents and commercial users, concerns that there would be too much commercial in the city, and support for pedestrian bicycle accessibility. Comments from the Common Council included concerns with overflow parking spilling over into the residential neighborhood. The potential for the commercial portion to become vacant for a long period of time, similar to the Velocity project that was discussed the same night. Is there a possibility of extra parking space for tenants in the 2- and 3-bedroom units without increasing the rent? Questions about placing the commercial fronting Rita Avenue, and then concerns for the corridor type feel for this project and other projects that have been planned along West Verona Avenue, and specifically that related to the 4-story tall building. Potential for a restaurant in this location. There was a desire to keep a restaurant here, and then making sure the project is bikeable and walkable. So once again, this is step 3 of 4 of the plan development process. This is the general development plan. This is where those zoning and exemptions and entitlements can be granted as part of the project. And then there's after this, if it's approved, it would go back for the PIP review with potential approval. This property is located within the Downtown Mobility and Development Plan that was adopted in 2014. This property was identified for redevelopment. As part of that, identified both the classic property and potentially the Anchor Bank property, which is now the Old National property. And the intent on that was to potentially be attractive to possibly an underutilized piece of property here. We have obviously a large green space. We have some older properties here, so from a redevelopment standpoint, it was attractive in that plan. We also included this property in our TIF district, tax increment district number 9. That's the TIF district for the Sugar Creek Commons redevelopment project southwest of here. Then that was created in 2017. So this is an area that the city has identified for quite some time as for potential redevelopment in that downtown neighborhood plan in 2014, and then also in the creation of the TIF district in 2017. And just for kind of update purposes, the Sugar Creek Commons project to the southwest of here, that is current. I think somebody dropped off.
Yeah, did we lose somebody?
Sorry, beep. Do you want to check, Luke, while I keep going?
Oh, Mike Hankard.
Okay.
It's hard to look for someone who's not there.
Yeah, so the Sugar Creek Commons project southwest of here, I did speak with the developer on Friday, and they still intend to break ground on that project this fall. That was what they told me. They did publicly bid out the public improvements on that project in August. So their goal is to start the project and hopefully start the public improvements this fall. That's still their plan. That's what they told me on Friday. So kind of back to this project, once again, the applicant identified, and we talked about this at the last Plan Commission meeting, the applicant is applying for WIDA tax credits for this project. That the tax credit application is due in September. Excuse me.
Where does the WIDA money come from?
The WIDA money comes from the state.
Okay.
So WIDA is part of this is Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Association. So WIDA tax credits are from the state. It's a competitive grant or tax credit program that projects across the state apply for. But basically, the intent is to subsidize and kind of reduce the rental rates on those units. The project would include 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units, and they would range from the 30% median Dane County income up to 60% of the Dane County median income. So the project itself, the applicant is looking at a mixed-use project. It's kind of highlighted here. It's a little tough to see, but fronting along Verona Avenue would be residential. As you transition towards Rita Street, it would be commercial with multifamily above. There would be a drive-through area for the bank. Anchor Bank would remain as a tenant in this project, and then parking would be kind of in this corridor here, and then also off the north side of the project as well. There would be underground parking for the project as well, which would wrap kind of the northeast corner of the property, so that'd be the access point for the underground parking. From a bulk standpoint, the proposed building would be set back 16 feet from Verona Avenue. The minimum setback is 15 feet and the maximum setback is 25 feet. This project is located within the downtown overlay district, so we have that minimum setback of 15 feet and the maximum setback of 25 feet. The setback to the north property line, so the rear property line, would be more than 70 feet. So the setback between kind of the building, most likely in this area or this area, would be approximately 70 feet to that northern property line. As part of this process, the applicant is requesting an exemption for the height. The ordinance allows up to 45 feet. The applicant is requesting to have the building be at 50 feet. That's for the upper parapet. And the intent of that upper parapet is to screen the rooftop mechanicals, to provide screening of those mechanicals that would be on top of the building. Access to the site, the applicant is proposing 2 access points. One access point would be from Rita Street, just north of the existing access point. And the second access point would be from West Verona Avenue, which is generally where the current access, one of the access points is for Old National Bank. They would remove 2 access points as part of this. There's an access point by Classic here on the east, and there's also an access point here at Rita. So those would be removed, and we'd have 2 kind of more permanent access points. I think we've talked about traffic a little bit tonight, but that's something that we are continuing to work through with the applicant. As it was brought up during public comment, the challenge here is the offset intersection with Legion and the offset intersection with Rita Street. So what we have here is just kind of some ideas that we've kind of looked at. And the big one that we kind of wanted to point out to that the applicant kind of brought up tonight as well is just currently where they have the access point for this drive coming in. There's no room for a left-hand turn lane as you go eastbound on West Verona Avenue. So there wouldn't be a spot where we could create a dedicated left turn lane. So we've been working with the applicant to try to move that as far east as possible. I know our traffic people are kind of continuing to look at that. That's going to be something we look at before the PIP would come back. Part of that is just since the project is going for tax credits, there's a chance the project may not happen, or not knowing what the timeline of the project is. It's tough to kind of make a full guess at this point of how this should look. We've looked at, I know I've seen a couple other ideas here. We looked at a roundabout in this location, and the roundabout just quite honestly doesn't work from a pedestrian bicycle standpoint. We've looked at trying to realign Legion and Rita Avenue, or Rita Street, and the challenge we run with that is we would need to acquire a significant amount of right-of-way from the church in the south, or we would need a significant amount of right-of-way or building from the subway building at the kind of northwest corner here as well. So it's challenging because of that. We've also kind of internally talked about, and this is just an idea we've talked about, of potentially looking at, do you potentially close Rita kind of going to the north as well. So we've kind of had every idea on the table. Ultimately, at some point here, the TIA needs to be updated. So we did a traffic impact analysis for the Sugar Creek Commons redevelopment with this project going on, and then also with the redevelopment of the New Century School property to the east. Most likely the city will be completing that TIA update to try to get some better traffic information and traffic projections based upon all three of those projects. And I think at that point we'll be in a better position to really make some solid recommendations on it. But since we have these three active projects in the area, it's a little more unique than what we've faced elsewhere, because typically we look at these on a project by project basis. But since we have all three happening, we want to make sure we take all three of them into account, especially with the new high school hopefully opening up here to the west in the near future. So traffic is still a work in progress. I don't disagree with the comments that are made tonight. I think it's important that we want to take a look at it. But kind of until we know what exactly is happening to the east of here, and then ultimately if this project is moving forward, it's a little more challenging to look at. This was an intersection we did identify as part of that TIF district, so we've known that was going to be challenging for quite some time here. But I think as these projects move forward, we'll be taking definitely a closer look at that.
So when you say close out Rita, where? Like at the turn, or just right at Verona Avenue?
So we have a driveway here, so we would need to accommodate that driveway.
Okay.
Potentially some location south of here. Then ultimately, if Rita were to be closed, this could potentially become a private kind of driveway access point for this development in the subway, and then potentially trying to provide some type of bike and pedestrian connection back to Rita, but then cutting off traffic. So we've looked at it. We haven't looked at that closely, but we're looking at all ideas at this point. But we haven't fully worked through that one yet, to be honest with you.
Okay, yeah, I totally understand. This is brainstorming stuff, but I would hope it would stay a public road. But anyways, that's totally off of not under discussion. I had a quick question regarding stormwater. Carla, could you talk about the potential impacts of underground parking on the stormwater? Because there have been, I fully recognize some of these houses were built years ago, but as alluded to by the public speaker, I think stormwater standards have gotten a lot better recently, and I just wouldn't want this development to make any flooding any worse. And so I guess if you could talk about that.
Sure. So the way that the site is, I guess, just naturally draining, it drains from east to west. So there's a low spot on the west side along Rita. There is a storm sewer inlet at that location. And so they would tie in, I think, at that location. And basically, right now it's flowing overland, and so they would need to match the same storm flow rates that we require in the ordinance. Some of the issues that came up tonight are a little bit different than what we normally deal with. So those are more groundwater issues, it sounds like to me. You know, we don't really evaluate groundwater as part of the ordinance, but I wouldn't anticipate that this would make the groundwater issues worse. They would be required to infiltrate water, but it's less than what would naturally infiltrate. I mean, we try and mimic what would naturally infiltrate just from a water quality perspective, but it's not going to be more than what's going in the ground today. So I wouldn't foresee that being made worse, I guess. If anything, you know, they may draw the groundwater table down as a result of putting in that underground parking. So yeah, I think with our newer standards, you know, in the past with some of the older developments where there's been issues, it's just because the ordinance was not as strong at the time. And so, you know, the developers at the time were not required to match like the flow rates that they are today. Another thing is that we don't allow developments to occur on wetlands for that reason. It sounds like maybe this area was filled, and then you have these long-term potential issues as well.
Thank you. With that, I would open it up to the Planning Commission. Questions, comments, or motions? Alder Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to make a comment in regards to some comments that were made earlier. I believe that making a decision based on the types of people that would be renting these apartments would be highly discriminatory. I understand concerns regarding you know, parking and traffic and whatnot, but being in a lower income bracket does not equate to people being criminals or having higher amounts of police calls. So I would hope that the other Plan Commission members would not take that particular comment into consideration when deciding whether or not we want to recommend this particular project. I just feel like that's a highly discriminatory statement in practice, and I would hope that we wouldn't consider that.
Other questions or comments from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Hingle.
I would second what Katie Cole said about low income, and also the idea that the community center across the street, that's a good thing that low income people would be able to go to a community center. However, I am concerned about how close this is to West Verona Avenue, the building, because I'm just wondering about if sometime in the future we might want to expand West Verona Avenue to 2 lanes going both directions to accommodate the, you know, the traffic that's going to the high school. And if this building is here, then that causes us not to be able to expand West Verona Avenue on that side.
Other questions or comments or motions from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Lytle.
Thank you. First off, I guess a question for staff. Off the top of my head, I'm not recalling examples of where we've approved 4 stories of multi-tenant next to abutting residential. So I guess maybe I'll pause there and see whether I'm not thinking of them or what other examples we have of 4 stories being approved in the city just in general.
Mr. Sayre?
And the one that jumps to mind that isn't been built but is just across the street is the Sugar Creek Commons project. So that's the one on Verona Avenue. Doesn't abut residential per se. I mean, there are some houses along Legion Street there. I don't believe Sienna Ridges, and if you want to think about that one, Pat, a little bit, that one I'm trying to look up here real quick. I don't think city center condos are think those are 3-story also, but I'll take a quick look here as we're talking, but those are the 2 that kind of popped in my mind as you're asking the question.
Commissioner Lytle?
So yeah, I think there were a lot of concerns raised tonight that I'm not sure we're going to have answers for those concerns tonight. I understand that the developer is working through multiple processes in parallel here. And while I would hate to jeopardize their ability to apply for and be successful with WIDA, you know, some of these questions about traffic, about height and bulk and what that would do directly to the north of it. Parking may or may not be an issue. I'm not sure that I'm convinced one way or the other on that. But, you know, is this project feasible at 3 stories rather than 4? What options are available to us in terms of acquiring right of way or adjusting alignment of the cross streets? I guess knowing what rights are granted as part of the general development plan, I'd be concerned about approving it tonight, given everything that's outstanding. I still think this is a really great opportunity for Verona to add to our housing diversity, and I really like the idea of getting more housing for families and more affordable. But that being said, I think we might regret jumping into this with some of the concerns that have been raised quite this quickly.
Mr. Sarah, can you talk about the rights that approving a GDP would give to the developers?
Sure. I mean, as part of this, there's exemptions they're looking for, and those exemptions included the building height of 50 feet. That kind of gets overall to the height of the project, and then a parking exemption, which was reduced to 1 underground space per unit. So those are exemptions that would be granted as part of this. So if a project came back and it was generally consistent with the general development plan, it's a project that generally should be approved. So if they came back with the exact same project, it would be difficult to deny it as part of that PIP. We'd have to be able to point to something that either is inconsistent with the general development plan or something else.
Right. So to just add on to that, basically, yeah, there is another step in the process, which is the PIP, but that's more or less hammering out the small details. And that if Plan Commission recommends approval and the council approves it, it's more or less going to happen unless, you know, as the developer said, they don't get WIDA tax credits and they decide to bail, or something else can happen. But as far as from the city's perspective, it would be more or less going forward. So just so we're clear with everyone. Further, Commissioner Lytle.
Sorry, I'll yield here quick. The question was raised about TIF and the use of TIF, which I recognize really isn't Plan Commission territory so much, but is it a general understanding that the but-for test, we could apply that to the non-residential portion of what's trying to happen here? Is there a way to fence off, you know, what those funds support as opposed to just lumping it all together with the overall development?
Mr. Sayer?
There could be. I mean, ultimately, what we utilize Ellers to take a look at that, and then ultimately it's a policy decision for the council if they choose to provide TIF for the project or not. But that's all based on the pro forma that's reviewed, and ultimately what we look at to determine the but-for need on the project. So is there a way of lumping it off? Potentially. It complicates it, obviously, because it's all one project. But you know, when Ellers looks at that, that's all part of the project, is the rental income on both the apartment side and also on the commercial side. We haven't looked at that. I guess I'd have to go back to Ellers and have that conversation.
Alder Cole.
I would say that, you know, based on comments earlier, Verona doesn't have a problem attracting market rate apartments and, not needing to provide TIF for market rate apartments, but we have had a serious issue in not providing workforce housing in the city. And I think if there's anything we can do, providing a little bit of TIF to provide housing for people to live in this city in a lower income bracket, I think that is a very positive thing to do. That is one thing we have had a problem attracting. So I don't think TIF in this case would be like a misuse of TIF funds at all, personally.
Other questions or comments from the Planning Commission or motions? Commissioner Hankard and then Commissioner Dr. Long.
Thank you. So first of all, I agree that the comment about apartments somehow equating to higher police calls is misplaced. I applaud them trying to bring workforce housing to town. I also, however, agree with the residents. I walked that property and looked around, and I live 1 block from the Lincoln Street apartments here, and I think that's tall and dense for that site. I don't think going to 4 stories anywhere in the city is, there are places perhaps, but I'm not so sure that's the place. And then the applicant talked about only wanting to gain permissible zoning. Could staff maybe just explain to me what they mean by that? And like if we approve this project at what we ask, I'll stop there. What do they mean by that, Adam, if you would?
Yeah, so from a tax credit standpoint is when they apply, WIDA needs to know if the project's actually going to be approved. And if the answer is no, that's a scoring criteria for WIDA that makes it difficult for WIDA to provide those tax credits. So when he says permissible zoning, it either has to be zoned in a manner that would allow the project to happen, or there has to be some type of entitlement in place to prove the project can actually be built as kind of shown and described. Otherwise, there's no point to considering it for tax credits if it's just a dream that may not be approved by the municipality. So that's what they need. They need that kind of entitlement in place to prove to WIDA that the project can actually be built.
As in, thank you, as in approved as it's shown now, for example, 44 stories, 80 units, etc.?
Generally, yes. Generally that, yes. So if it was strictly based on zoning, if the zoning would allow X amount of units on that piece of property, same idea. So if it was a project elsewhere, potentially in the city that met the zoning, met all the setbacks, they could go to WIDA and say, okay, it's zoned, the project can be built, we just have to go get it approved. So it's permissible by the zoning requirements. So it's allowable by the zoning requirements.
Okay. Well, in that case, it would not have my support. I think it's too tall and too dense for this site. Thank you.
Commissioner Tucker-Long and then Commissioner Hengel.
I was wondering about the parking exemption. What would they normally have to have? Because I think you said they're asking for a decrease in parking, correct?
Mr. Sayre?
Yeah, our parking ordinance, and we've talked about this before, we're woefully over parking properties. So you go strictly by an ordinance standpoint, there'd be a lot of parking that have to be provided. So typically it's based upon, the applicant's looking at 139 parking spaces. I believe it's based upon the types of units itself. And I know Catherine's looking as I'm rambling here too. So they'd have 80 ground underground parking spaces, 59 surface spaces. Generally, the commercial area would have to have 54 spaces. So, I mean, they're probably, I'm just going to do the math real quick. Right now, they're at 1.73 spaces per unit. We typically kind of start seeing in that area for projects like this, in that 1.5 to 2 spaces per unit. The complicating factor on this one is just the commercial space. Since we don't know who the tenants are, it makes it more challenging to calculate that. So we know the bank, but we don't know who the other tenants are. So If the project needed to go with straight zoning, you're probably looking closer to probably over 200 spaces would be my guess, easily. So it's probably at least 60 short of what the code says, but I will just put the caveat out there. The code, every project like this needs a PUD because of parking, because our parking, like I said, is we woefully greatly overpark these properties, and it's every apartment project you look at, you'll see that request.
Commissioner Hingle.
I was thinking if you're go from 4 stories to 3 stories, can you take out a little bit of the surface parking so that you have more green space? And I also, what you were just saying, Mr. Sayer, about if the Classic Tavern were in one of these commercial spaces, that would be a lot of parking, a lot of cars. Old National hardly has any cars, but on Friday night, you know, Classic Tavern is pretty busy.
Commissioner Tucker Long.
Yeah, going along, just one more comment on the parking. If we are talking about trying to get in working force families, and we're talking about, you know, 3-bedroom places and trying to get in people who are working around the city, I'm guessing at least a portion of those are going to need 2 cars parked, not just 1. And if we are targeting working force families, we're not getting in maybe the older population that doesn't have a car or things like that. These are probably people who need cars to park. And yeah, if we don't know what kind of businesses are going in, I'm hesitant to decrease the parking too much. But I'm also wondering too, yeah, that space is really small. I also went over and walked around the space just to see how big it was, and it's really small. And if you've got people coming out of the businesses and coming out of the apartments, and then again, if we're targeting families, there's going to be the green space across the street, but it's across a very busy street without a convenient crosswalk there for kids to get across to the playground areas. And there is no green space to play anywhere on the property. So I kind of feel like it's really packed in. And yeah, I feel like it's also too tall. I mean, looking around there's nothing else that feels like it would be quite that tall. And I don't know, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, if you know if anything else there nearby is that tall. But I do know that, like, when we were discussing, I don't know if it was the Fairfield or which hotel it was that was across the street that wanted a 4th story, and we said no because it was just going to be too tall. And now we're looking at doing that on the more sort of what feels like the more residential side of the street, I guess.
Other questions or comments or motions from the Plan Commission? Does anyone? I guess I would just try to take a temperature of the room. Do people feel comfortable taking a decision tonight, or is this something we want to delay till next month and get some of our questions sorted out? I guess informally, maybe put your hands up if you want to delay. Okay, that's everybody. So, Mr. Sayer?
If you're going to delay, I would just say just make a motion to postpone until the next meeting.
Okay. Questions, comments, or motions? Commissioner Little.
I concur with Mr. Sayer's suggestion. I feel a little bad that we've had this much discussion without allowing the applicant to chime in. I guess the kind of question I would pose to them would be more about, you know, what impact would a month delay have on their application with WIDA? Is this like a calendar year cycle where, you know, they're going to be hamstrung for 11 months because of it? I mean, I think trying to force a vote tonight would not turn out well. And I don't think any of us want to discourage this type of development, but some of the details here we have concerns about approving as of tonight. Maybe first check with staff, Adam, in terms of, you know, what you know about the situation, and then if Mr. Mayor, you're okay with it, just letting the applicant chime in on this delay.
I think that's a good suggestion. Mr. Sayer.
So kind of regarding the situation, I think that it's probably a question just for the applicant of just what the impact from the tax credit standpoint is. You know, I believe the application deadline is December, so I don't think it probably delays that by any means. I think they're probably just looking for certainty. I think it's more of a question to the applicant, though, if there's concerns about height, you know, what potentially could happen to the project at that point. Is the project still a viable project, or is it no longer viable? So I guess I'll have to defer to the applicant on those.
Okay, I guess since there was a question from the Planning Commission, if you could bring the applicant up to answer that question.
All right, I'm back. Sorry, what was the question?
Commissioner Lytle?
Sure, this was just, you know, looking for some feedback from you in terms of whether you're dead in the water without 4 stories, whether you would be able to consider some alternate configurations to get more units, and then the plan we have in terms of delaying this and what impact it would have for your application with WIDA.
Sure. You know, Adam did quote it correctly. The applications are due in December. We do have work that needs to be done between approvals and that point in time in order to get the application ready, which includes a third-party market study, some other third-party reports that we need to have done. And so there is some time associated with that as well. I wouldn't say from a timing standpoint that the deal is dead in the water if I don't have approvals tonight, but my bigger question is, where do we go from here? I think overall, you know, this site is, you know, it's highly desirable. I think, you know, the cost of acquisition represents that, which kind of also drives what we would do at the site in order to repurpose it and redevelop it into something that fits within, you know, multiple plans that the city and other folks have, you know, put a lot of time and thought into. We kind of got to this structure. You know, one of the big things that I would look at, you know, it's just that 9,300 square feet of retail that, you know, I feel is very important to the city and long term. You know, once we get that, you know, filled in, you know, I think the city's gonna be very happy that we have that there, you know, kind of contributes to the walkable downtown, you know, that sort of thing. You know, when it comes to tax credit development, there is rules associated with how much income can come from commercial as well as residential to make the project eligible for tax credits. And so I'd be a little bit concerned there if, you know, we're looking to switch to a smaller residential property with this amount of retail. And so really it just comes down to, you know, what's really important, you know, to the city at this site. You know, we're trying to put together a lot of different ingredients. And, you know, I know that Adam didn't show you the rendering of the building. I know it's in your packet. We do have multiple step backs, you know, at this property to kind of really address that height issue. So it's not 4 stories all the way around the building. But, you know, could we take a look at, you know, amending the height of the project? I think only if we can significantly reduce the amount of retail. Otherwise, the project, you know, just doesn't work from a financial feasibility perspective. You know, we are requesting, you know, TIF financing. I do think that it's an appropriate use, especially, you know, for those who are applying for tax credits. One of the things that, you know, everybody should know about tax credits is that it's extremely competitive. These types of projects in the city of Verona will only, you know, qualify for a couple of different set-asides of tax credits. And in those set-asides, you know, you're sharing, you know, a pool of credits with maybe 4 or 5 other projects around the state. So you really have to be one of the top projects around the state in order to get these resources. And part of that is scoring competitively, and one of the competitive scoring categories is financial leverage. So even if, you think that the property could be done, without financial assistance, WIDA will give, tax credit applications, priority if they see that there's other, sources of financing in there outside of the tax credit, so they can spread their resources around the state a little bit further. So long-winded answer to your question, I think we could sustain an additional month, but the question back to the commission is, where do we go from here? I mean, I think we've done a lot to reduce the look of the building as far as height goes. I'm interested in looking at across the street kitty corner at a 4-story building. That's one of the reasons why we felt like we had a pretty decent plan going into it. And I have spoken with, like I said, a handful of the households that align Rita Avenue to the north of the site, and many of them don't have concerns and would like to see this, project redeveloped, including, like I said, the one that has, the solar that's on top of the project. I can tell you that there's some pretty mature trees on that site that are going to be taller than this building, and that will remain taller than this building. So I don't necessarily see the concerns of the height, especially given, the project right across the street. But I guess we're at the discretion of the commission. So thank you.
Thank you. I guess as long as we have an applicant up here, any questions from the Plan Commission? Seeing no hands, thank you.
Yeah.
With that, we were still discussing the GDP. Questions, comments, motions? Commissioner Hankard and then Commissioner Lytle.
Well, to try to give the developers some direction, I'm not convinced. I don't see why the city would be requesting them to put in commercial. I don't see another little strip mall in that place to be essential. So if one of the ways to reduce the height or bulk of this thing is to ditch some of the commercial and bring down a story, in my mind, that's an answer. Because we've got other commercial that's coming online as part of these other projects. We've got commercial all over the place that's empty. So let's get, the butts in the streets here. And then commercial can build the seats. I think we've had the cart before the horse here all along by everybody wants a restaurant. They need people. So, I don't have any problem with some of these apartment buildings coming to town. This is a change that's sweeping the entire country. I hope people understand. Everywhere I go, New England, Midwest, Pittsburgh, Denver, you name it, this is occurring everywhere. So embrace it, in my opinion. Allow some density to occur, but be sensitive to the residents. So that would be my comment. If we can. You wouldn't lose. I won't shed any tear for the loss of some of the commercial as part of this project.
Commissioner Lytle.
Commissioner Hankard took most of my speech there. So to address the question about 4-story kitty corner from this site. I do think there was a lot of concerns the Plan Commission raised when that approval went through. I also believe it's a pretty significantly different setting in terms of being next to a extensive established residential neighborhood. I know we've managed some things to reduce the impact to some of the properties on Legion Street. But I would not want us to suddenly say that we're open for 4-story abutting lots of our thoroughfares through the city. Just building on that, I think I would make a motion that the Plan Commission delay acting on this project for 1 month to allow more information to come back in terms of traffic and a potential alternate configuration. Defer to you all whether that's the right point of order whether
I would say to the next meeting, because I'm not, it might be like slightly under a month, and then it would be a 2-month delay. So to the next meeting, the next Plan Commission meeting.
agreed. I amended accordingly.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Powers. Commissioner Lytle already spoke. Motion before the body. Any questions or comments on the motion to delay until the next meeting? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
Are we going to be able to get more information before the next meeting as far as the traffic study and the kinds of information we're sort of looking for?
Mr. Sayre?
The traffic study won't be completed, so that won't be done, but we can have our traffic engineer attend the next meeting, and he'll be able to answer questions a lot better than, well, myself and Carla and Catherine here. So we'll have Jess Billmeyer attend the next meeting.
When will the traffic study be done?
That's a good question. Part of it's going to be dependent on what happens south of here as well, too, with the former New Century property, and that will be on the agenda for potential discussion by the Plan Commission as well at the same meeting. So you'll have kind of two projects right next to each other talking, being talked about. But I think once those get closer to be more finalized, that's something we can take a look at. But if you start pulling commercial out and then changing potential unit counts or not, those are the kind of things that impact the traffic impact analysis as we take a look at it. So it's hard to do it until we get a better understanding of what is viable and what's going to be approved on this property and also to the southeast of here.
Kind of a moving target.
It is.
Motion before the body. Questions, comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of taking up this topic at the next Plan Commission meeting, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. And we will discuss it at the next Plan Commission meeting. Mr. Sayre, was there anything else you need from the Plan Commission on this topic, or do you feel you have enough to go back to the applicant to get clarity?
We're good. Thank you.
Excellent. With that, we will move on to item 6, which is a discussion and possible action regarding site plan review for an approximately 5,000 square foot storage garage located at 4391 Maple Grove Drive and operated by Dane County. Ms. Holt.
The property is located at 4391 Maple Grove Drive, which is within the right-of-way for U.S. Highway 18151 as depicted in yellow on the screen, which will magically appear. The property contains a solid storage shed building that was built similar to the barn on site. Dane County is proposing to build an approximately 5,000 square foot storage garage, which is shown in orange. The gray block shows the location of the salt storage barn on the property. Although a landscaping plan was not submitted, staff recommends landscaping between the building and Maple Grove Drive. The building is shown, next slide. So the building shown in the left portion of this slide is a one-story building with 4 garage bays. The building will mimic the red barn color and metal ribbed material and contains windows on 3 sides of the building. The 4th side contains the 4-bay garage. The roof pitches away from the garage bays, creating a smaller looking building by Maple Grove Drive. No action is required as this building is not located in the city's jurisdiction. However, staff recommends the Plan Commission provide feedback on the storage building. Staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Thank you for that explanation. Does anyone from the Planning Commission have feedback on this project? I'll call on myself first. I agree with staff's comment about landscaping. I think I kind of like the trees that they have up there, and I hope they put in some native Wisconsin trees as well to kind of help screen it a little bit, and I just feel like it's a good add something out there. Any other questions or comments from the Planning Commission on this topic? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I think they did a nice job on the salt storage building. I mean, it could look, it could look pretty boring, but they made it look sort of like a cute one. So, if this is going to match that style, I don't have any concerns about it, and I appreciate them trying to make a more mundane building look nice.
Other questions or comments from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Powers.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I agree. The existing structure looks fine when you're driving from the interstate or the highway, driving past it. This one will be set back a little bit further. So I noticed there was the trees behind it in the picture there. Is there going to be anything between it and 151, or will that remain open?
Ms. Holt?
Like I said, they didn't supply a landscaping plan, so my assumption is that what you see today is what's there. At some point, they will, based off of the plans that were submitted, it looks like they have another spot that they might add another building to in the future, but at this time, I don't know when there's a need for that or when that would occur.
Gotcha.
Other feedback on the county garage? Seeing no further feedback, we will move on to item 7, which is a discussion and possible action regarding a plan unit development, PUD concept plan, review for a 3-story, 42-unit apartment building located at 1057 North Edge Trail. Ms. Holt.
So the property is located in the corner of North Edge Trail and Cross Country Road, as depicted in yellow. Access to the property currently comes from Cross Country Road, North Edge Trail, and Prairie Way Boulevard, with the latter 2 roads as private roads. This property is part of the Prairie Oaks neighborhood that was created in 1997 through the PUD process. There is only one vacant property left in the neighborhood, which is beside Goddard School in the northwest corner of the neighborhood. The applicant proposes to raise a portion of the existing commercial building located closest to North Edge Trail and construct a 3-story, 42-unit apartment building. The commercial building fronting onto Cross Country Road would remain. The applicant is proposing to create 2 separate lots for this property through a certified survey map, with 1 lot depicted inside the red square. This would allow 2 lots to have 2 separate zones of urban residential for the lot inside the red box that allows apartments, and suburban commercial for the remaining lot, which allows personal or professional services and office by right. Currently, the PUD, when this was established, there is no underlying zone for this. It's just labeled as a zone called PUD. So it's very difficult to determine what the setbacks would be, what the requirements are. So by doing this rezoning process in the future, it would allow us to understand what we're comparing things to. The proposed apartment building depicted in the orange is 15 feet from the front setback, which is less than the required 25-foot setback. The side setback in the north is 10 feet, which is less than the required 15 feet. However, other properties in Prairie Oaks neighborhood have allowed porches to encroach into the setback, similar to Murray Glen townhomes. Access to these 2 buildings will remain the same. The applicant is proposing 1 underground parking space per dwelling unit. Bicycle parking will be incorporated into future design submittals. The existing surface parking lot will be extended to match the length of the proposed apartment building. The applicant is proposing a total of 42 units with 9 studios, 21 1-bedrooms, and 12 2-bedroom units. Building renderings were not submitted as part of this application. Earlier in the staff report for this one and for the classic property, there's a table that discusses all of the multifamily and any residential buildings that are underway or will be included in the future as potential applications. So this one happens to be one of those listed in the table, and it's part of the city's residential phasing policy. I was thinking, I didn't put it in this slide, it was in the classic slide, I believe. This application could be considered mixed use in the sense that the commercial building fronting onto a cross-country road would remain and the rest of the property is flipped into multifamily units. So this is the table that I was mentioning that has the locations of all of the proposed multifamily in the city. Some of them are approved and some of them are not, such as the first one is the Berkeley Street one, which is a concept plan that, and North Edge Trail, which we're both discussing tonight, as well as the 410, 420 West Verona Avenue site. 841 North Main is currently under construction and was approved for a senior family, seniors. And then the 142 Paley Street, we reviewed that at the last month's meeting, and we changed the commercial to 3 live-work units. So this goes back to the residential phasing policy. So this project could be exempt from the phasing policy if the property in total would be considered as mixed use, not solely the individual buildings. Again, this is a concept plan. Staff is receptive to this application. Staff recommends the Plan Commission review the submitted materials and provide feedback to the applicant regarding the land use, which is key here, types of apartment units, and the setbacks. Staff is here to answer the questions as well as the applicant, who I believe is watching virtually.
Thank you for that explanation. This is, of course, a feedback only, so we'll open it up to the floor for feedback. Any plan commissioners have feedback? Commissioner Powers, then Commissioner Tucker-Long.
So the statement around them being considered kind of a mixed use, they're not necessarily going to be connected though, right? Because I assume there will be 2 very different looking buildings, one being a luxury apartment and the other one being the existing structure.
Ms. Holt?
Yes, that is correct. They would be 2 separate buildings. The gray block there would be the existing commercial, and that would remain. They have not indicated that that would be renovated to match anything that they propose for the apartment building in the orange.
But we'd consider them mixed use because they're the same ownership, essentially.
I think it's, mixed use is a term that gets thrown around a lot. So mixed use in the true form is where you have commercial, retail in the first, apartments above. It's also been thrown around of mixed use in the same property where you have a, same property, but 2 different uses kind of mixing together. So it depends on how you want to classify it. And the whole intent of that table as well is just, part of it's just to update the Plan Commission just on what projects we have out there, just because there's a lot, and sometimes we lose track of those projects too, and staff loses track of those as well sometimes, because there are a lot that have been approved and a lot that are currently kind of in the works of being built.
It doesn't shift any of the responsibilities or I guess the regulations on the building.
No.
Commissioner Tucker-Long.
So in building this, are they completely tearing down the building and building a new one, or are they just building on top of the existing building? Like, what happens to the retail that's already there?
Ms. Holt.
So the building, in the applicant's narrative, he suggested that the current tenants would be able to have an opportunity to move into the existing building on Cross Country Road, where he currently has vacancies in those commercial slots. They would need to be modified or tweaked to accommodate the needs of the current tenants that are along North Edge Trail. Once the tenants move or come to an agreement somehow, then the residential, that portion of the building would be demolished and then the apartments would be constructed.
If I could just add one follow-up question. I assume the applicant has talked to the business owners, and they're not going to find out about this in the Verona Press in a couple of days.
I know he's reached out. I'm not sure what the timeline on that reach out was. I've heard some conflicting information, but I know he's reached out and is at least now in the process of communicating that with the tenants.
Okay. That's good. Other feedback from the Planning Commission? Commissioner Lytle.
Thank you. You know, this, I'm a little skeptical from the outset. From the way it's laid out, it seems like it's going to be kind of a apartments or townhomes surrounded by concrete on all four sides. I know they can incorporate some more green space around it. There's quite a bit of multifamily in this neighborhood already, but all that's to say, I don't necessarily think it couldn't work. And so, you know, understanding, you know, how they plan to make the building attractive and not, you know, set in a sea of asphalt, how it might connect with other amenities in the neighborhood, and then just in general, make sure the scale of it is manageable to, you know, the existing scale of multifamily already in this overall neighborhood, I think is what I'd be looking for the next submittal.
Excellent. Other feedback from the Planning Commission? Commissioner Hingle and then Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I would agree with the concern about not enough green space. That it needs some kind of green space, especially if you're going to have some kids in these apartments.
Commissioner Tucker-Long.
I guess my concern would be the concept of luxury apartments. Given the proximity to the schools, it'd be nice if these could accommodate, you know, more working families. But, you know, I don't want it to just be, you know, expensive apartments that, you know, and the rebuilding of the building to make it fit with expensive apartments there. I don't want it to drive out the local businesses that are currently in that building. Given the state of the businesses right now with, you know, the pandemic's influence on local businesses, and then to incur a moving cost to a new location, which means updating all your paperwork, all your business cards, like signage. I mean, that's a huge expense. And there are some small, tiny, locally owned businesses in that building currently. So I'm just kind of concerned about the negative impact on the kind of businesses, you know, that we want to have in town and what exactly they're hoping to accomplish with that.
Ms. Holt, is the applicant in the audience? Could we call and ask them regarding this?
Yeah, let me take a look here. Hold on.
Okay. I mean, if they want, I mean, we're not the Congress. We can't make anybody answer questions, but.
And Michael, I'm going to bring you into the meeting, so I'm not sure if he's set up to talk, so we can try.
Okay.
So I just want to give fair warning on that. Here we go.
Michael, are you there?
You might be calling in. Let me just
Okay.
take another look here. Hold on.
He just went on mute, so he might unmute here in a second.
We might unmute. Okay.
I'll work on it.
Okay, are you there now, Michael? Well, I guess maybe that's something staff can take back to the applicant. Oh.
Hello.
I hear an
You
echo.
there?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. I'm having troubles signing in. Do you have the video or just the sound?
Just audio.
Hello? Okay. Well, I'll proceed. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm the managing partner for Prairie Oaks Retail Center. We've owned the property since 2005. And one of the things that we've done from day one and myself included, and that is I work hands in hand with the existing tenants. This COVID-19 situation has really put a number of our tenants in a bad situation. For example, our plan to raise the existing commercial building and replace it with 42 apartments, that whole concept evolved from the COVID-19 shutdown. I was contacted by many current residents wondering, hey, can I quit charging rent? Can I let them out of their lease if they have a lease? So I gave deferred rent to a number of businesses, and it's still a month by month kind of a situation. Nobody really knows how we're going to shake out of this whole thing. In the existing building, I have roughly 5,000 square feet of commercial tenants in the part that would be removed for the apartments. And in the current building that is along Cross Country Road, I've got 5,200 square feet available. So I could absorb every tenant in the North Edge Trail side and move them over to the Cross Country side. That being said, 3 of the 5 tenants on that side are in month-to-month leases. A couple of them have requested me to try to lease their space. So I not even quite sure if this happened a year from now, if they even would have any interest in continuing their business. If they did want to continue the business, we certainly could make room for them and would be more than happy to move good businesses into the front part. I have directly talked with 2 of the 5 residents on the plan. In fact, just today I talked with 2 of the businesses. One of them is not in a lease, but is a long-term tenant, and they want to play it by ear. I said, if I built you out a new space and, would you be interested in moving your business? She said, well, a year from now, I can't even say that. This whole COVID thing has everybody up in the air. The bottom line is I would certainly work with all existing tenants to relocate if they were willing to relocate. That, of course, though, would have to come with a longer lease term than a month-to-month, which most of them are on now. Step number 2, as far as the green space, I do agree it's a little tight on some green space, but what we plan on doing is using some of the space for a nice patio with the grill station. We'd add screening with trees, bushes. We have an apartment building in the area that we developed 3 years ago called The Point. It's an 82-unit luxury apartment building, and if anybody wants to go on our website, you can see pictures of our large patio, sport court, and grill stations. So we've been doing this for a long time. We know how to build apartment buildings that people enjoy the amenities, and they enjoy the quality of construction and other items that people want in a new apartment home.
Thank you.
And if there are any other questions, feel free to go forward, and I'll try to answer those questions the best I can possibly.
Well, since we have the applicant up, do any plan commission members have any questions? And I know there's really bad echo. Commissioner Hingle.
I'm not sure it's but a patio with grill is not the same as like some grass for a kid to run around in. If you're going to have kids, are they going to play in the parking lot? That's not a good situation.
Yeah, and I'll be, I guess, quite honest here. We do not discriminate against anyone. The type of apartments we're going to be building, generally speaking, will not have a large amount of kids. The Point is an 82-unit luxury apartment building that we built 3 years ago. And the type of residents we get are primarily professional residents. That if somebody wants to use the patio, and but you have a unit mix of studios, 1 bedrooms, and 12 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartments. My recent experience with 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartments, that the top demand for those type of units are going to be people that are selling houses and want to downsize. It's not really going to be designed or geared towards families, although we certainly do not discriminate against any type of family type. But we don't expect a lot of demand for green grass on a big ballpark or something like that. And of course, we're like kitty corner from the huge school properties that I guess the middle school is going to be relocating to. There's plenty of playground area in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing no further questions, applicant, I cannot unmute the applicant, but since there are no further questions, thank you for that clarification. Any other feedback on this project? Commissioner Powers and then Commissioner Hankard.
I have looked at the Point Apartments. I saw that was one of their previous ones, and they do have a very nice outdoor amenities. They have a big sport court and basketball court and tennis court and things like that. And given their mix of studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, I do expect that there won't be a huge demand for parks. So it is a very nice unit. I will give them that. The complex does look nice, and it may draw the right crowd there. I think that challenge, or I think what they might be addressing is the challenge that there's a lot of vacancies in that area right now in terms of businesses, and they might be trying to make the best of a bad situation for themselves in that area. Whether or not there's parks there or green space isn't something that they can necessarily solve. Obviously, it's just a bunch of parking lot now, so it wouldn't be necessarily adding to the problem, but bringing people there, obviously, to have a place to live and play would cause a little bit of that problem. But I do think what they've done with the Point does address some of that.
Commissioner Hankard.
Yeah, thank you. 2 things, in terms of the current landlord and his relationship with his tenants and breaking leases, and it sounds like he's a good landlord, to be honest with you. He's been helping people out. He's trying to work with everyone through this uncertainty. So I don't think that's our place to get involved with his relationship with his tenants. And similarly, I don't think it's our place to get involved with the lack of green space. I agree with him that the target market here is professionals, and they're going to build it and advertise it. And if you come and you don't think it has enough green space, well, don't live there. I think I went around to all these places this week, and this one as well. And if you're going to go big anywhere, this is the place to do it. It's set low, so if you went to, I'm not advising this or recommending this, but this is a place I think accommodates some density. There's plenty of place for overflow parking. There's no real access issues. There's other 2- and 3-story buildings around. So I don't know. This one to me is somewhat of a no-brainer. I would be in favor of it.
I'll call in myself. I do like this overall project. I think it's good infill, and I think putting some people there might help the businesses that are currently there, and it might help some of the empty storefronts get filled and with businesses that are successful. I do like a lot of green space, but I also wouldn't want the sort of perfect to be the enemy of a good. And I think this is good infill. And if we were starting from a completely blank slate, you would drop, the city would hopefully drop a park in the middle of there, but ultimately we have to deal with the city as it is. So I think on the whole this is a good project. Other feedback from the Plan Commission. Seeing no other feedback, Ms. Holt, did we cover all the points?
Yes, I think you gave good guidance on the land use part of it, which would be the major hurdle for any applicant in that property.
Thank you. Seeing no further comment, we'll move on to item 8, discussing the possible action regarding a plan unit development, PUD, concept plan review for an 80-unit apartment building located at 121/125 Berkeley Road. Mr. Sayer.
Thank you. So this is a concept plan development review on Berkeley Road. The next 2 items on the agenda are actually owned by the same person. So they are separate applications, but they're slightly tied together. So the applicant is, currently there are 2 existing apartment buildings on this property. They were built in sometime in the 1970s. Each building contains 10 units. So there's a total of 20 units on this property. So the applicant is looking to take those units and obviously demolish those units and build a new multifamily building on it, which would be 80 units and be 3 stories. The applicant also owns the property, the former motel at 409 East Verona Avenue, which is the next item on the agenda. But his intent would be to build this project here and then move the people currently in the motel over to this site and then ultimately redevelop the project on East Verona Avenue. So they're separate, but they kind of work together just because he would move those existing tenants from East Verona Avenue to here. The plan development process is a 4-step process. This is step 2 of 4. This is a concept review. That's an opportunity for the Planning Commission to provide feedback. This will also go to the Common Council meeting next Monday as well. The layout of the property is, it's a kind of a backwards L shape, upside down L shape. It would kind of front along the Military Ridge State Trail. It'd be 3 stories. They would have underground parking as well. The underground parking location is right here. The applicant is proposing 2 access points, one from Industrial Drive and then one.
So I have one quick thing. I didn't actually see the laser pointers thing. Where would the underground parking be? I'm sorry.
It's right here. Can you see that or not?
Very, very faintly.
Yeah.
Okay. I see. Okay. Thank you.
Next meeting, I'll find a better tool for that. I'll ask my kid. So the underground parking would be here. There would be 2 access points, one from Industrial, one from Berkeley Road. Staff has no concerns with the access points. As part of this project, we request them to build the sidewalk along there. Currently, this part of the city has no sidewalks, but to kind of set this up for the future for better connectivity, we would require the sidewalk along Industrial Drive and also along Berkeley Road. We've also requested a connection to the bike trail along the kind of southwest corner of the building. This would give residents kind of an easy route, easy path, safe path to get to the bike trail. So the applicant is aware of that and is looking into that. Parking on the site, the applicant is proposing 112 parking spaces. 53 of these spaces would be underground and 59 would be above ground. This comes out to a parking ratio of 1.4 units or 1.4 stalls per unit. One difference in this project and other projects is the applicant is not looking at that typical 1-to-1 parking ratio. I know the goal of the applicant is to try to kind of continue to keep the current kind of tenant kind of mix that he has right now, trying not to make this an overpriced project. And part of that is just, it's expensive to build underground parking. So that's kind of the goal of what the applicant is looking at. The project also has a good amount of studios and 1-bedroom units. They've got 25 studios and 34 1-bedroom units and only 21 2-bedroom units. So this is a more geared towards that studio and 1-bedroom kind of clientele. So it's more of a policy type question for the Plan Commission because we typically do look at that 1-to-1 ratio, but something for the Plan Commission to consider as you kind of look at this project. Generally, staff is supportive of the kind of the redevelopment of this site. It was built in the 1970s. You typically put a lifespan on projects like this of 30 to 40 years before they have to do significant types of repairs and improvements. This is close to the Velocity project. It's also close to the redevelopment that's happening at the New Century site north of here. So generally, staff is comfortable kind of with redeveloping the site. The applicant is here tonight. They'd be happy to answer any questions to the Plan Commission, but we would encourage the Plan Commission to provide feedback on kind of the redevelopment of the property, looking at kind of the parking question that we raised as well. Just any feedback that you'd have on that would be appreciated.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments on this proposal? Commissioner Hingle.
I wasn't clear on what the price points would be, if there would be any workforce housing at all, or if the cost would be similar to what current residents are paying, both here and at the former hotel.
Mr. Sayre?
I think it's probably a question for Jason Hughes. Jason, can I bring Jason to the meeting? He's the actual property owner.
Question for the applicant?
Yep.
You guys got me?
Gotcha.
Good.
All right. Yeah, good evening, guys. So the price point, yeah, we're going to honor the price points of all our current tenants. And that is, I would say they're from $650 to $850 right now. So yeah, we're not looking to put them into $1,000, $1,200 a unit. You know, some of these people do walk, they work at Ellis Manufacturing, they walk to Playcon. So the parking ratio, I understand the concerns on that, but yeah, we have a lot of tenants that don't have vehicles. So
Thank you. I guess while we got you up here, any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Lytle.
Thank you. Just as I was walking through this area, it appears that you all may be owners of the properties across the street. They look quite similar. They've been built around the same time. Not asking you to commit to anything right now, but you know, if this goes well, are you looking at potentially some redevelopment on the other side? Or maybe I'm misreading the ownership of the units across the street.
we don't currently own the ones across the street.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing no further hands, thank you for answering that question. And I definitely just wanted to say that I absolutely appreciate honoring the old leases. I think that's a really good thing, you know, to do, and that you guys don't have to do. So I think that's great.
Yeah, no problem.
Further feedback on the project? Commissioner Tucker Long.
I really like the idea of connecting up to the bike path. I think that would be really great and something really useful for, you know, for future tenants there. I do agree there's a lot of like paved parking lot, and it seems like the building's moving closer to the trail, and then there's going to be more parking lot on this location. So I know underground parking is expensive, but if there's any way to sort of keep some more of that green space, you know, people living right next to the trail may really appreciate that.
Further feedback from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Henkard.
Thank you. I kind of like this one as well. I think it's a great redevelopment, if you will, or upgrade to those existing stock, and the fact that the landlord is taking care of those existing tenants, I think that's great. So I like this project. Thank you.
Further feedback from the Plan Commission? I'll just echo the earlier comment by Commissioner Tucker Long. I think it would be great to connect the path. Of course, obviously that land is owned by the DNR, so that's on them, although I'd be happy to talk to any state legislators and try to, if it needs a little help. And, you know, just because I say this about every project, I would love to see an aggressive landscaping plan and a lot of trees, because I think it would help it blend in better with the trail, and I think it's a nice amenity for people to live there. But you know, on the whole, I think this is a good project. Any other feedback from the Plan Commission? Seeing none. Mr. Sayre, do we kind of cover all the salient points?
Catherine has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Holt.
Sorry, I'm taking notes, and one of the questions was about the parking, because that could adjust how this property would be designed if they come back for the next submittal.
Was that directed towards Commissioner Tucker Long or just in general?
In general, as Mr. Sayre said, we usually do a parking ratio of 1 parking space underground per unit, and in this particular one, we are not doing that. At Classic, they were doing it, and other ones that we've reviewed tonight have all done it. So depending on what your decisions or comments are made, would determine how the building would shift or get redesigned if they come back for another submittal.
Gotcha. Well, I'll just answer that from my own perspective, and I think that I'm fine with this. I think the applicant made a good case, basically in general, with what they said about not needing more parking. I also think that the kind of apartment mix isn't going to have a lot of overflow cars, and we've talked about workforce housing that regular working people can afford, and the problem with a lot of developments, costs get passed along. So we make them put in more parking, they have to raise rents, and then not as many people can afford to live there, even if they could have previously afforded, with their current job to live at the stuff on Verona Avenue or the current location. So I think, it's a balance, but I'm fine with the parking mix as it is, but of course, happy to hear what other people have to say on the Plan Commission. Commissioner Lytle.
Yeah, I echo your thoughts. I look at this a little differently than some of the other proposals that have come forward. From my perspective, there's quite a bit of existing impervious surface the way it's currently configured. We gain quite a number of units without increasing the impervious surface much. And we're working on redevelopment of an existing apartment building, which to me allows for a little more flexibility there, especially given, as you said, their willingness to work with tenants and keep tenants in apartments here in the city.
Other comments in general or on the parking policy issue? Seeing no further comments, was that acceptable, Ms. Holt? Okay. With that, we will move on to item 9, which is a discussion and possible action regarding a plan unit development, PUD concept plan review for a 10,565 square foot multi-tenant commercial building located at 409, 411, 415 East Verona Avenue. Mr. Sayre.
Thank you. So once again, this is the same property owner as the last ones. They kind of go hand in hand, but the applicant is looking at redeveloping the 3 properties on East Verona Avenue. Just for reference purposes, hopefully you can see this. This is the old motel property. There's a house kind of just to the east of the motel, and the old English floral garden is the house at the corner of Lincoln and Verona Avenue. So it's those 3 properties that we're talking about tonight. The floral garden building is currently vacant, and the motel has 15 units within that property. Once again, this is part of the plan development process. This is step 2 of 4. This concept would also go to the Common Council next Monday night. This entire area was included in the downtown mobility and development plan. It was included as a potential redevelopment site. The intent of this shows potentially 2 commercial buildings in this area, potentially looking at mixed use as well. So the kind of what the applicant is looking at is about 10,000 square feet of commercial space. They'd have a multi-tenant building here. They'd have a potential kind of larger space at the intersection here, and then with a drive-through as well on the western side of the building. Generally, this is consistent kind of with what was in that redevelopment kind of plan for the downtown. One thing it does call for is a more prominent type building at the corner of Lincoln and Verona Avenue. Assuming this moves forward, the applicant will need to provide some additional architectural detail at that corner to provide more of an entryway and gateway and kind of into the kind of an extension of the downtown area. From a bulk standpoint, the applicant is looking at setting the building back approximately, or meeting the 25-foot setback. They'd be set back approximately 25 feet. This has a minimum setback of 15 feet and a maximum of 25 feet. Staff doesn't have any concerns at this time. They do have patio seating kind of wrapping the entire building, both along Verona Avenue and also along Lincoln Street. Staff is supportive of that as well. Access to the site, they would remove all the access points from Verona Avenue, and they'd have a single access point from Lincoln Street. Staff has directed the applicant to kind of contact the property owner to the south, that's the Lincoln Street Apartments, to see if there's the potential for a shared driveway in this location. I think at a minimum, though, they should look at trying to work together to provide at least some type of pedestrian connection in this location here. This will be a coffee user of some type that it'd be probably wise to provide that connection. Otherwise, people will naturally make their own connection there.
When you say coffee user, who do you mean?
The user itself, it's Dunkin' Donuts.
Gotcha, and a Baskin Robbins.
Correct. They'd provide that pedestrian connection. If they provide that, people will just walk that way anyways. So staff would encourage them to kind of provide that connection. The applicant is proposing 43 parking spaces. We look at parking based upon the uses. So once again, we'll need to take a close look at this. Typically, when we back out the spaces, we look at one space per 300 square feet. That would put the required parking at 36 spaces. So most likely they would need a parking exemption as part of this. The applicant identified potentially using street parking for this area. Staff would advise them not to rely on that just because this is a potentially busy area with the ACT when they're operating. There could be the potential to use some parking here at City Hall. That parking is generally not as utilized, especially the back part of it towards Lincoln Street. If they were to look at the fire station, they'd have to talk to the fire chief and see if there's any parking available. That's a sizable lot, but that would be a conversation they'd have to have with the fire chief if they wanted to use any parking there. As part of this, staff is recommending a right-of-way dedication of 13 feet from the property. As part of this project, at this time, we would imagine we would remove the on-street parking when this project gets redeveloped, just because there'd be most likely more of a right turn happening in this location, and removing that would improve that right turn ability. The future right-of-way dedication wouldn't be for improvements today, but would be for future improvements in this area. And those would include potential bike lanes, making it safer for pedestrians, wider sidewalks. The sidewalk in this location is a narrow sidewalk, I think it's 4 feet. So trying to make those improvements, but that's a long-term item that we need the additional right-of-way for. So when that day comes, we have the right-of-way available to make improvements in this area. So that staff is receptive to kind of redeveloping this property. It's been a need for a while. It's been identified in the downtown plan, but staff encourages the Plan Commission to provide feedback in the submittal and provide feedback to the applicant. Obviously, they're here tonight, and they'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll just make a quick comment on parking. I would obviously defer to the fire chief in regards to what he would want to do, but my instinct says sharing parking at City Hall, totally great. We could put up signs on when and where people can park, but I would rather not have people in general publicly parking at the fire station because it's both fire and EMS, and I would not want someone rushing into a call, rushing into a shift, and not be able to find a parking spot because that would be really bad. If I can't find a parking spot at City Hall, I'm annoyed. It's not a big deal. If EMT can't find a parking spot, it could potentially be a big problem. But with that, I would open it up to feedback from the Plan Commission. Alder Cole.
Just had a question. Is this going to encompass the space where like the kind of like motel apartment building is? And so that's the case, then this is currently all retail. There isn't going to be any apartment space or anything for the people who are currently living there.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
They would move those over to the Berkeley Street project. That's the intent.
Oh, okay. The project we had just talked about.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the Plan Commission? Oh, Alder Cole, sure. Yeah, you have the floor.
Sorry, I had one more question. So will the rent that the people are paying at the current location when they move over to the new location, is that going to be the same, or are they going to be seeing like an increase?
Mr. Hughes did say that he'd hold the current leases, so then people would pay the same amount.
This location, not necessarily just the old other location. I was confused. I thought he said he was holding the leases at that place for people who are currently living there, but if he's moving people, are they going to be keeping this same rent?
They would be keeping the same rental agreement, so the same payments.
Okay.
Other questions or comments on this project? Commissioner Lytle.
Thanks. A couple of questions or maybe comments. I'm glad to hear staff say that we're looking at a little additional right-of-way dedication. I know it came up for the redevelopment of the property on the north side of East Verona Avenue, where we were hoping to gain some width there. I continue to see cars headed west from past Lincoln Street on East Verona Avenue really get confused by the way the lanes are marked, and we go from 2 lanes to a parking spot to no parking spot to having to really kind of weave to get back into the westbound lane. I think overall it would be a great if we can, make some gains in terms of the driving lanes, in addition to obviously pedestrian and bicycle improvements. The other question, it's not vital, but from the way this was being described and the fact that at least for now we have a committed user for the drive-through, do we have an idea of what kind of timeline the applicant is looking for to make all this happen while getting folks moved to a building that doesn't yet exist?
Mr. Sayer?
So in the submittal, it says we anticipate starting the construction in the spring of 21 with a 10 to 12-month construction schedule for phase 1 apartments. The retail project will follow after existing tenants are relocated. So if you figure it starts in the spring of 21, it'd be hopefully completed by the end of 2021. So the retail would start potentially in 2022, with my guess, based upon the schedule.
Great, thank you.
Other questions or comments from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Tucker-Long.
In general, I'm supportive of revitalizing these properties. I'm a little sad to lose the English garden style house because that's a really cool property, but it also is very old. So I understand. It'd be awesome if they could keep like a gazebo there, just because the gazebo's always been super fun. But the only concern I do have is we're going from sort of 2 lots that had a lot of green space to almost all pavement for these 3 lots. Because the English Garden property and then the house next to it both had big yards with lots of green space. And then the new drawing seems to be almost all pavement. So if there's any way to cut down the pavement at all, that would probably be nice.
Other questions or comments from the Plan Commission? Alder Cole, and then Commissioner Hankard.
I would just say in general, I'm in favor of this project. I just, on a personal note, just a little disappointed to see more like fast food type restaurants going in there. That seems to be like the main drag for like fast food alley, and I was hoping for redevelopment there that would involve some smaller businesses or kind of more local style businesses versus more fast food. But that's what I hear from a lot of residents as well, so it's just some feedback, personal preference, I guess.
Commissioner Hankard.
Yeah, I'd like to voice my support for what was mentioned earlier about the that's a gateway, and so whatever architecture occurs on that corner is kind of important. You know, I live and work right around the corner from that. This is my neighborhood, and like all of us, I drive into town there, you know, many times, and that is kind of an entrance point. Once you get past fast food nation there, that's like when you get into town. And so I mean, I was thinking a little more bulk. I'm not sure what they're thinking, but I'm not afraid of a little bulk right there. Everything else around there can handle that. So I'm in favor of it. Hughes is their own neighbor to the south. Lincoln Street's not going to care to the east, so it fits in good. So yeah, please have them pay attention to and give us some more detail on what they're thinking from an architectural standpoint.
Yeah, Colin, myself, quick, I would like to echo Commissioner Haggard's comments about the architecture. I would definitely charge staff to make sure to work with the applicant and make sure it looks nice, interesting, maybe a little bit unique. I know the Blaine's Farm and Fleet, when it went in, they changed their design to kind of suit some of Verona standards and made it look a little bit different than some of their other buildings. I would love a Dunkin' Donuts branded gazebo, although I don't know where they'd fit it on the project. But I would also, you know, potentially be in favor of a 2-story building there as well. I don't know what the applicant has in mind if they only build 1-story buildings, but like Commissioner Haggard said, I think, you know, potentially a little bit more bulk there would be good. And I just want to echo the comments that staff made about a shared driveway. I think that could potentially be a benefit both for the people at the apartments and at the future development, in the sense that you don't have multiple driveways right next to each other, which can be potentially confusing. It can, you know, it's another conflict point with people walking. So I think that's really beneficial. And I mean, it's pretty standard with most projects where we're trying to reduce the number of driveways on intense streets. And I also think a pedestrian path would be great, because people are going to walk from the apartments directly whether you put one in or not. So you might as well find a good location, put it there, and then it can be maintained. And it can kind of integrate in. And then I guess my final thing would be, I would like it, so if you're coming south from Lincoln Street, in there's a clear path for how you walk from the sidewalk to the door. Just so, as someone who walks a lot and who's walked through a lot of strip mall parking lots, it doesn't always feel safe. And so I would like it where there's an obvious sidewalk or path so they can get to the door. But that's my feedback on the project generally. Other questions or comments from the Plan Commission? Seeing no further hands, Mr. Sayer, did we cover all the salient points?
You did, thank you.
Great. With that, we will move on to the last item, which I believe is adjournment. Motion to adjourn would be in order. Commissioner Tucker-Long. Motion to adjourn. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Sorry, I didn't know if you needed me to actually say it. I move we adjourn.
Okay, I like to play it by the book. Seconded by Alder Cole. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. And we are adjourned at 9 p.m. Thank you all.